Zina Sterling Silver, and I've been asked by Formlabs and 3Designs to share with you how I do some of my work. I've gone ahead and set up most of this file already so that we can cut to the chase. I've basically imported the outline of a cuff bracelet that I want, and so I'm going to select it right here. And as I select that, it turns blue. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude it wider than I need it to be. So let's just say I'm going to go, well, let's say 30 millimeters, and I'm going to go both sides, so now it's 60 millimeters wide. So now I have this extrusion, and basically this is just a surface. There's nothing I can do with the surface except I'm going to select the surface, and then I'm going to what is known as unwrap it. So there's a tool right here called UV unwrap, and when I unwrap that, I can choose to have it perfectly centered in the universe. Right here at the X, Y, and Z, I'm going to set that Y to 0. So now it's perfectly centered, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And now you'll see that it's pretty much sitting underneath the cuff, but it is just a flat surface. And I'm going to go ahead and finish that. And now you'll see a light outline of that. So now I don't need the cuff anymore, and you'll see why later. So I'm just going to delete that item. And now I have this grid work, and if I click on it and it gets highlighted, I can find out what size that is by using my move, rotate, and scale tool. And if I click on the scaling side, it will tell me that it is 147 millimeters long, 60 millimeters wide. So that just gives me an idea. What I've done now is I've gone into my modeling, and I will go back in there and show you that basically what I've done is I've created the surface area of my cuff. And I've broken that out into 20 partitions by lengthwise and 16 in the other direction. And what you can do is there are 3 ways to manipulate in the 3D universe here. You have basic surfaces, which is this icon right here. You can do your edges, which is all of the grid work you see, and you can do your points. Now what I've gone ahead and done is I've gone in and actually created groups of attributes. So you can see right now that there are certain points that are chosen. That's going to come into play in a minute. So right now I'm going to take the edges, and when I click on my attributes, you can see I've created a group called top alternating edges. And if I hit that little rubber stamp, you'll see that it's chosen every other alternating edge. They've turned blue because I've already selected them. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move those up. And if I want to do it by a specific tolerance, well, first of all, the blue arrow that you see right here that's the vertical right now. So I click on there, start with everything at 0, and I can choose for the Z direction to be 1 millimeter, and when I click that, it goes up. If I want to do it 1.5, I just change it, and you'll see that now everything has moved up. So if you look on the side, you'll see that those edges have now been raised slightly above the other edges. What I will do now is I will use the sharp edge tool, and if I click on that, now everything's got a nice sharp edge to it. So I'm done with my edges. Now I'm going to go into my points. And now if you go and look at the attributes that I've created here, you will see that I have a bunch of different rows of points. So we're going to start with row 1 points. And we'll go from the top view here. And you'll see that every other point alternating for, here's the first row, second row, third row, and fourth row. So rows 2 and 4 have been selected and they've been alternated. I've called that row 1 points because that's the first one that I'm dealing with. So now let me just show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go ahead as I've selected those, and I'm going to use my resizing tool. And by using just the green handle right here and pulling it downwards, I'm bringing those in towards each other. So now I'm going to go ahead and do that. I will validate that move. Now I'm going to go back to my attributes. I will choose row 2, resize that, bring them towards each other, and then I will go ahead and go back into the list. Row 3, I'm going to resize those points by bringing them in towards each other. Validate that, go back to my list again, row 4 points. We will resize that, and now you can see all of those points have been brought, and they're actually almost overlapping, or they are overlapping. So now if we look at the side, you'll see, and I'll go to the slightly different view here, just so you can see it a little better. The desert wave collection is starting to take place, but it's not done yet. We're going to go back into the points and go up to the top, and then if I go back to, you'll see I have a attribute here called row 1 midpoints. I will choose those, and now you can see these are now from row 4 to row 6, but alternating from the other points that have already been manipulated. And I'll do the same thing again. I will pull these closer to each other, and then go back to my list. Shows row 2 midpoints. Go ahead and resize those. Go back to my list. Row 3 midpoints. I will resize those. And then at the end, what I'm going to do, and I'll just do this manually, I'm going to take these points and I will hold down the command key so I can select multiple points. And since I'm not actually resizing these, what I will do is I will just use my move tool, and I'll do that manually and just bring them pretty much overlapping with the others. And we'll repeat the same on the bottom row here. And now that a lot of the points have moved, you can also, it's a little more clear as to what points you need to select. Oh, those just clicked right into place. Okay. So now if we go back to surfaces, you'll see that's really our pattern. And you get this nice soft valley in between these two because the edge in there is soft as opposed to the hard edge on top. So now I'm going to get out of my shaper. Modeling's hid, and I'm going to go ahead and unhide that. So there's my piece that I just created in Shaper. And if you look at it from the top, you will notice that the finish size falls within the grid. That's very important because anything that falls outside of the grid of an unwrap will not get wrapped. So now basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select my modeling. And I like to create a clone of it just to be safe. So I can go ahead and play with my clone and leave my modeling untouched if I need to go back and make any last minute corrections. So I will choose my clone. I will go over here to the tools. There is the wrap, which is the opposite of the unwrap. I'm going to choose to wrap that around my unwrap. I'll validate that, and boom, there it is. That is my desert wave bracelet in a nutshell. So hopefully this was a little bit of gives you a bit of an idea of how I do my work in this collection. And now the next job we will do is we will send this to the Formlabs printer and print it up.